So, as a way of starting today, I wanted to go back to something that we were beginning to address in our last conversation about how the work lives in us beyond the work after the experience is over. How do we go out, I think, into the horizontal, as you mentioned earlier, or how does that experience get integrated into us in the vertical? How are we changed, or how do we do something different as a result of the experience? And the place that it's always easiest for me to access a new idea in myself, or to sort of connect with the meaning of an experience, is by thinking about my own process. So when I started taking your class this year, on the first two classes particularly, I had this experience of I was in my heart and in my body and in my mind and in my spirit all at once. I was just totally present in a way that left me with a profound quietness inside, as if everything had arrived at this moment. And I remember thinking in the first class, I want to go toward things in my life that give me this experience of wholeness, of being integrated, of feeling there's room to bring my heart and my mind, and this feeling of more, not less, no compartmentalizing, that there's room for all those parts of myself at the table and in the moment. And I think this is something that's very particular to the way you work, although I have had those experiences with other trainers and other settings as well. I believe that that's the way I make sense of or interpret your work in my own life. That's the way that comes to me, and the way I use it in the world is feeling empowered to live from that whole place, as opposed to living out of a compartmentalized role or a compartmentalized set of responses to life. It's a lot of words, but I wonder if there's something there that is interesting to you. That's my experience of your work. I wonder if you could say something about your experience.
It just seems, Terri, that the more I relax, like deeper and deeper relax into what precedes my efforting to be helpful, to make a difference, to do something, when I relax, whatever area or level of awareness that I have that is ready to be seen and spoken arises. So relaxing, and sometimes there's a thought, sometimes there's a feeling, sometimes there's a gesture, sometimes there's a stepping back and receiving, a stepping forward. So there's this kind of sphere of response that I am. I'm like this being of responsiveness to what's moving within me and between us and around us. So while I certainly resonate with the phenomenon of coming from, for me, it's more like coming to things as this sphere of ability to track the awakening of all of the cutting edges of our growing sphere, in all of the different ways that we evolve as these beings that get to be housed in these bodies. So yeah, so just the intimacy of enjoying clean presence within us and between us and around us kind of sets the tone for a playful, open exploring of, gee, I wonder where this is going to go. You know, where are we going? You know, and the expressive arts has really supported the love of improvisation. That's how I began when I was about 15 in improvisational theater, and stayed with that quite a long time before I moved into the studying to be an expressive arts therapist. But that learning all of the tools of improvisation within the art form of the actor's training really was very helpful to become skilled at delicate response to any little opening that we can move into in any area and any level, and just be in this place of, gee, I wonder how we're going to open up this conversation or open up this visit. And it feels very spherical to me, and very kind of I suppose the way I use the word spirit is more phenomenological. The spirit of the moment, the spirit of what we are, infilling who we are. Yeah, it's like delighted by the spirit of beauty and honesty and delight. So our work becomes not only ensouled but enspirited with the phenomenon of the spirit of well, I think it's the human spirit.
Well, that's such an interesting specification there. That was something that I was trying to articulate, something about the spirit and something about the overlap or the opening. Sometimes spirituality is considered like a bad word in therapy or in expressive arts, because we're in the realm of phenomenology. You know, so there is sometimes, I think, a reluctance to name that or to talk about the spirit or talk about things which aren't immediately visible but are experienced. And again, in my own world, and I'll just name it because maybe it's a way that we can get into that conversation a little bit. Spirit is in the realm of experience in my life. In other words, I can't get there a lot of times by thinking my way in, or by, now I can make decisions when I feel in touch with my spirit. I can make a decision in myself and have a recognition, which later becomes a thought and gets lived out in my life. So I don't mean those parts aren't connected or communicating, but a lot of times in the work, we ask people to stay with the phenomenology of the next step, or the phenomenology of what they see in the painting without making interpretations, or and to really observe. And so I wonder, I personally experience expressive arts as a way of accessing that part of myself. But because it's hard to articulate, and because it's hard to formalize, I think it's a topic that gets avoided. But I wonder if you have something that you could say that would help me make sense of that element in our work.
Well, human is actually the adjective for human being. We're beings. And I don't have a problem using the word being instead of spirit. They're not the same, but to say as a being that's human for a while, what do I know? And I'm interested in the nature of reality. When I talk about spirit, I just think of a certain frequency that is much more subtle than my physical body, that's still me as a being. And I have spent almost 40 years finding the phenomenological language for those very subtle experiences that are me, but not this self. Sort of like there's something that precedes this self, which I'll call me, or my being, or what I am. And the therapy, for me, is how do I give what I am, whatever name, whatever word you use, essence, core, spirit, being, how do I give what I am a life and who I am that's congruent and that's true? And how do I fulfill my potential as this incredible being or spirit? How do I give that potential a life in this self? How do I construct a self, that is kind of like the servant, the spirit of me, the essence of me, the core of me? And the expressive arts, for me, has been one of the ways to create frames for staying with that question. Almost 40 years, just to stay with the question is, one way to phrase the question is, how can I give what I am a life in who I am? How do I take this sense of what I am as a being, as a being of beauty and light and love and openness? How do I give that very etheric me a way to take care of all of the nitty-gritties of everyday life? How do I find the joy of living what I am in who I am? And what I realized over the years is I'm not going to find any answers. I've got to create ways to stay with that question of how, and ask it again and again. How shall I embody what I am? And how can I learn through my own innocence how to return to what I am and then step into the world without losing that recognition of my spirit, of my essence, of what I am? How do I keep this essence alive as I move horizontally into a very not only complex world, but a complicated world? And how do I take care of that innocent spirit that I am? And then to create frames for people to find their own language and their own way of reconnecting to their essence, to the profound in them, and then seeing how it can land in all of everyday's opportunities.
And I can see on your website and on your YouTube channel, and I can see that it's not like you stopped everything to write the book. Like you continued to teach, you continued to work, you continued to create programs in the world. So do you have any thoughts about how those things were intertwined during writing the book, or how you have personally been changed? How has your work been changed through the process of writing the book?
I am capable of being happy for no particular reason. It is my nature, but joy is different. When I'm rooted in my capacity, my inherent capacity for the joy of just being alive, that goes pretty deep. I'm rooted pretty deeply in profound gratitude to just be alive and have this opportunity. So I keep my feet in that, very rooted in that deep gratitude. And I keep my hands busy. They're like if the roots, when I'm grounded, then there are the branches and the wind's blowing and uh, all this activity up here. So I can accomplish a lot in a day, accomplish a lot in a year. Um, I have lots of projects happening simultaneously because I have the agility on the surface, because I feel quite deeply rooted in something that is insurmountable. I'm not anchored in what I love, because an anchor you can pull back up. I am rooted in what I love. I'm rooted in the littlest bit of wisdom I have about what I'm here for, and I don't leave it. My resonance with that depth is it's a constant. That's part of my maturity. Is that there's no reason to leave an awareness of what I'm rooted in. So then this playfulness on the surface is boundless, really. But I must say my first love is that deep rootedness. It's my home. And I like I like going out there and flying around and playing, but it really is secondary. I would say because I've learned what's primary and what's secondary, I can relax in both levels, relax into the depth and the goodness of rootedness, and relax in the depth and beauty of playfulness. Yeah, feet in the deep, hands busy. But I think relaxing is the key to both. Relax into the depth and be taken by our inherent capacity to relax into those deep levels, and relax into the joy of manifestation, to give form to this, going back to the word spirit, this formless spirit that comes up through what we're rooted in and is able to take form in the world. And the arts are this wonderful way to kind of massage that liminal space between the, the, the essential energy or frequency that comes up from the deep and out onto the surface, so that I like to think that when I'm working or just my everyday life, that my life feels saturated with the meaning that I'm coming from. I don't always know the purpose of expressive arts. I don't always know the purpose of what I'm doing. My book is not about the purpose of expressive arts, but the profound meaningfulness of the quality of time when you're coming from a place that is at your core honest, in a way that feels like you are, in a sense, devoted to only honest. And so there's such a freedom of expression when you feel that you're honestly coming from a place that feels true. And so you get to relax more and more into this, again, going back to the image of the sphere, this sphere of sort of wholesomeness that we inherently are. And so then my distortions, and I'm hoping the people I work with, the distortions just kind of fall away. I don't work on my issues or other people's issues. Just watch how the distortions start to fall away as there's an infilling of this sphere, that is us, with the goodness of what we really are. That gets to have a life and who we are. And I try to find a way to say that as simply and clearly as I can, with an enjoyment, a genuine enjoyment of intimacy, to intimately track the littlest bit of knowing that I have, firstly, and then to bring in thinking and feeling. But I start with, what do I actually know is true? And then to begin to give that some thought and to feel. And I think a resonance with the book, Terri, is that you are also able to do what I'm talking about. You have this felt sense of how to intimately stay connected to your core, and have spent a life also wanting to see if you can be able to articulate the phenomenon of resonance with your core and still be out in the world, and to inspire others to
Absolutely.
do the same.
Absolutely. Um, that is the ongoing challenge as things do get more complex and more complicated. And the the challenge of it is not as much in the articulating of it, but it's in the staying with the knowing and the awareness part. That's the part, as there's more input, more information, more things going on, more events, and more visibility of the events, and then life stuff, just staying current with what you named earlier, getting the groceries in, taking care of the laundry, doing things like that, as that becomes more and more complex or layered. At this time in my life, I'm tending to my own household and to my mother's household at the same time. And so for me, it's making enough space to connect with the awareness, the self-awareness, and my core knowing. That actually is the more challenging piece. And through the work, that gives me an opportunity to do that. And then to have an opportunity to talk about it, to articulate it in a group regularly, like we were doing in the monthly classes. That is the thing that helps me hold on to it between, is doing it more regularly, being in a group where the conversations can occur, being in this conversation with you, giving attention to that, that really helps. There is something about the articulation piece that translates it into something I can take and apply. So there is something important about that for me. So this conversation is enormously helpful to me in that way. And your book was enormously helpful in that way. But, maybe for me, if I was having a closing thought, it would be that reading your book was a lot of information and a lot of crystallization in my own thinking, but being able to discuss the book with you actually helps me grab it in a way that I can take it to my own life now, particularly to ask myself, what would my version of that be? In other words, I can't go back and recreate your research project in my own project, but what would my own authentic way of researching and gathering and translating that information into a format? So over and over again, I come back to the idea of shaping space. At one time, you were talking about shaping energy, the energy that's coming up from your core, and you're shaping it in the world and all these projects and the branches. And then shaping our experiences by interacting with them and turning them into ideas and thoughts and things that can be practiced or replicated. That's really interesting to me. And again, is one of the values that I took from your book and also from this conversation.
Beautiful. Well, what occurs to me, Terri, as we're bringing our time together is one of the things that we share is our love of clarity. And I think the book, even more than anything else, was the enjoyment of creating clarity for myself and than I had hoped for the reader. Inspiration comes and goes. So my wish is that your being with the book not only inspires you, but it ignites your love of clarity. And that love of clarity will fuel you to create clarity. As a researcher, because it sets a frame for recognizing what matters to you, and that sets the tone for everything else in your life. So to have a project that you really care about, that doesn't stay in a bubble, but that sort of helps set the tone for how much you love creating clarity, you'll find that it's beautiful how loving research isn't about the project. It's just one arena to give some time to what you love, which is creating clarity, and it really affects absolutely everything, absolutely everything. So thanks for spending some time with me in this series of 3. This is the last of our series of 3, and you're giving me some feedback on how the book touched you on many levels. And I'm not only grateful for our time together, Terri, I just feel like it can be a springboard for future conversations that open up our mutual love of clarity.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you, Markus. I appreciate the opportunity and I appreciate the collaboration. It's good to co-create
Isn't
with
it?
you.
Yes.
Okay.